What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, guys, we're going to be talking about the differences between red dots and iron sights, specifically if they're relevant in a gunfight and which one are better or what are the pros and cons, right? Now, just to get a disclaimer out of the way, not in law enforcement, not in the military. I've just shot over and over and over again under both for the past, I don't know, 33 years or so. I've had about 10,000 rounds through this particular gun. It has an RMR Type 1 in it, and we'll talk about that later. And again, don't take my word as gospel. This is just my own personal experience under the red dots, comparing them to other pistols that I obviously have that are iron sights only. Now, one last thing before we dive into this video. Guys, thank you guys for subscribing who are subscribed. And those of you who aren't, make sure you do subscribe, follow us, and give us a like, and actually hit the bell notifications. That way you're notified when we're posting new videos and new content. Helps the channel out a lot, guys, and tremendously. Now, to go into some of the points that I want to talk about, and then we'll get into the crux of the video, is the advantages of these sights. And we'll start with red dots. Right here, I have this Prodigy that is clear. No mag in there, right? Pre-checked them all before the video. So, RMR Type 2, difference between the RMR Type 1 is that this actually retains the battery better, even though I fixed that one a long time ago. I got that one back in 2013, 2014-ish, so about 11 years. And I every day carry these pistols, swap. These are part of my rotation. So the main point is the target acquisition. It is much faster for me now to bring up this pistol and actually acquire my target because I've built those reps. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, other thing is target alignment. It's easier to align with this red dot. Obviously, it's just kind of point and align. As long as it's zeroed, you're going to get on target pretty fast and align your targets relatively easy, even in awkward positions when that may not be the case with iron sights. Improved focus, in my opinion. You can focus on your sights and focus at what you're looking for and transition this firearm to where you need to fire it with the red dot a lot faster. And it also, in my opinion, is better for your periphery and your vision overall. Now, I've used both of them, and as I'm scanning, I'm not going to scan through it because that is a tunnel vision effect, which we'll talk about later. I'm going to look and then move the gun to it, look and then move the gun to it. And I could track that dot much better and focus in on my target and overlay that dot onto the target with not necessarily having to worry about focusing on the rear and front sight. It could be debated later that that's irrelevant, but we'll talk about that in the main part of the video. Also, it is easier to track this sight, as if you do have to track and scan and look through with your red dot, you can track that much easier. And as you're firing and the gun is recoiling, it's a lot easier to track this versus your sights. Okay. Low light is where this, I think, is probably the best. At night, you can easily see the red dot at night, and that's pretty self-explanatory as it is bright and you can adjust the settings and then fire down range. Okay, that is just a pretty much objective fact. It's not debatable. Even with like True Glow and Trit sights, this is much better. Moving on to sights, they're simple, right? Iron sights are very simple. No need to adjust. They're always on the gun if they're secure. We'll talk about that later because I've had them fall out. Concealability is also a topic for discussion. You're going to hear a lot of people saying, well, it doesn't conceal well. This is a P365X macro Legion, not a 320. I would really hate to have a 320 right now. But this also comes ready for a sight. It is ORC, so optics ready. Up top here, you can just remove this and put it on there. And, you know, sights are getting smaller with technology. They're not the full-size RMRs like these pistols. They have an RMR compact, I believe. Holosun, SIG actually has one too, which fits here. It's just much smaller. I think it's the Romeo. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have it, but I probably will. But compared to the iron sights, yes, it is an objective fact that iron sights are just simply more concealable because the profile of the pistol is a lot smaller. Whether that matters to you or not, it's just personal preference, but it is an objective fact. Now, this pistol is also clear, just to point that out. All right, put that back up on the wall. And the other, I think, main point is for iron sights, and one of the pros is definitely that it's low maintenance. They don't typically move. There's no need to zero it. You don't need to swap out the battery. You don't necessarily need to, let's say, clean them as often. Like every now and then, about once a week, I clean my pistols, and I make sure I take care of the RMRs. But they're low maintenance. You do have to check them to make sure they're not shifting and whatnot. I've had Glocks lose front sights all the time. And I've also had some of these guns, like this pistol I have here, which is also clear. It's a plastic sight. This is a GSG. It's essentially a SIG. They are the original. They used to make the 22 for SIG. It was contract manufactured out. But yeah, that one popped off on me also. And again, that's just more of a, maintenance thing. And you do sometimes need to adjust these because they will fall out of alignment with the sight tool and whatnot. So let's go into the crux of the video. Are they relevant in a gunfight? There's two things to be said. One, I like my RMRs to always have backup sights. And you'll bring this gun back up, iron here, and iron there. And if this fails, I can go still back on my sights. Two is one, one is none, right? The old principle. Now, from what several subject matter experts and people who have actually been in gunfights, I have not. I've trained to put myself in uncomfortable situations, such as running and doing essentially a hit workout on the range and then practicing getting on target just to get that heart rate up and train. And that is a big portion of what I'm going to dive into. You do lose your iron sights when you're running really fast, and you do lose the dot when you're running really fast, specifically when you're really close, if you're shooting and drawing from the hip. And your draw stroke needs to be practiced to build that muscle memory so that you can put effective shots downrange. The last thing you want to do is draw your gun, first of all, not know how to draw it properly from your waist and shoot it in concealment, because battle belts and kit are cool. But the reality is that most of us are going to be carrying either a 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, or maybe even in a everyday carry bag of sorts, right? And you're going to want to practice that. And I do practice with the kit, but I also do make it a point at the very end of my range routine to do that because I'm kind of gassed already, simulating what's going on through the rest of the day in my day-to-day. So training is essential. And why do you lose your sights? It's because you built in that muscle memory. And a lot of things are happening real fast in a gunfight. Of course, this has all been actually spoken about. A lot of the operators that have been put into situations where they're just running through a room and they need to make decisions really quickly, they're going to be just basically bringing up their muzzle and firing and neutralizing the threat. A lot of decisions need to be made pretty quickly. Now, what can I say about that? And Tactical Hive, if you haven't seen their channel, look them up, Tactical Hive on YouTube. They put out a good video on this. And the point is, you have to bring up your gun and shoot and get your standards right and do it repeatedly for that muscle memory to be built in. I cannot stress this enough. This is true. Okay, we through shooting throughout the years, I've noticed that as I bring up my gun, I can fire and get on target a lot faster with my red dot. And when I used to shoot on iron sights, it was the same. So it basically comes down to what you train with. But are they relevant in a gunfight? Probably not. It depends on the speed of that fight and the level of fear you have, where you're going to probably use the sight and just go off of instinct. Now, that will be better if you practice it more often. I'm not saying to necessarily practice the, getting into that sort of situation. I'm not telling you to go out there and do that, get yourself in, or put yourself in harm's way, sorry. But rather just practice those reps, bringing the gun from your waist and shooting, or just, your fundamentals, making sure you have proper stance, sight alignment. That's not always going to be the case, but as long as you build that connection from drawing and bringing that pistol up and indexing it to where your red dot's on target or your iron sights are on target, you're going to be more effective at shooting that way when you need to do it in a hurry, if that makes sense. If you look at the competition shooters, excellent, amazing, especially the grandmasters. They can shoot from the hip at, targets that are 10, 15, 20 yards downrange and get hits on target fairly easy. And that is just all through repetition, building in those indexing points and the muscle memory of firing the firearm ad nauseum. Of course, not all of us can afford to fire at that schedule. So what can you do to practice is dry fire, Mantis, a lot of other things to help you get some reps in, but there's nothing that's going to replace shooting at the range. And try to find a range where you can put yourself under stressful situations. And believe it or not, a shot counter. Those things are great. They kind of kind of force you to be a bit in a hurry, not necessarily with the fear factor up, but they do kind of force you to make a shot quickly. And again, progress through it. Don't try to go sub one when you literally just got into shooting. Okay, and that kind of segues into another point. Are people now knowing to shoot, learning to shoot with red dots versus iron sights? And yes, that is now becoming more of the case than it was before in my day, because I started shooting on irons and then made the transition. I did have to retrain myself, but just like vehicles back in the day were manual, most of them now, I learned how to drive a manual, and now the next generation is learning to drive exclusively, basically on automatics, and where I had that transition also. So that is just the case, guys. Know that with the advent of technology, they're coming from the factory with irons, and a lot of them are coming already with red dots, where that wasn't the case. When I got this one back in 2013, I was kind of considered like an early adopter, and people were like, "Yo, dude, what is that on your gun?" Like when they shot with it, they were super impressed. So, that's just the way it is. Technology, you're going to see it more. Now, are there other cases where you're gonna use your red dot, or where it's going to be advantageous compared to your iron sights? Yeah, this is very new, very out there, but night vision. Now, I understand not all of you have night vision, and for those of you who do will understand this, but realize that this is kind of a niche thing. It doesn't necessarily apply to the gunfight scenario, but it can. If you're going to throw this on when somebody's coming into your house, you do see your red dot sight in nods, and you don't see them with iron sights. Now, there is a difference. The True Glows and some of the trit sights on some of these, the Trijicon trit sights, can be seen faintly under nods. Not obviously as good as you'd like. You're probably, if you're gonna, try and do that type of shooting, you're gonna end up with a red dot anyway, or some sort of holographic sight. It's just the way it is, because it's fine. You can fine tune it. You can make it brighter, and depending on the situation and the and the type of lighting you have, because that also affects your night vision. That's going to change. Understand that. But it is definitely better. Now, one of the last things I want to talk about is tunnel vision, and it's very easy to get with both. And tunnel vision with this, it's not necessarily tunnel vision. I just understand it that way in my head, which is just the way I've kind of figured it out, is when you're presenting presenting a dot or any optic up, or iron sights, you tend to try to align your rear and front sight or your dot, and you're focused in on that dot, and you're scanning and trying to look through it and then find your target. And that is a big mistake, because it creates a lot of focus only on the dot and on the irons. I believe, and I've seen improvement in my shooting while doing this, is as I am moving through my shot progression, I'm looking around for other targets. I'm finding that target first, whether it's just glancing at it through my periphery, or just moving my head, and then I'm moving the pistol and firing. I do not track through it. It makes you slower. It makes you much more mechanical. And again, I believe that it takes away from your awareness. And that is just not good when you're necessarily in a gunfight. I wouldn't think it's favorable. Again, I've yet to ever been in a gunfight, God forbid. But if I do, I hope that would be the case, that I've built the amount of reps where I can just draw my pistol out and fire, because I've already done it so much that I just it becomes almost like a subconscious thing, versus being conscious about it. Your conscious is going to be focusing in on taking in as much information around you in that time, because you don't want to die. So guys, that's pretty much it for the video. I would really love to see if there's any of you and any of the people who are watching who have been in a gunfight, and tell me again your personal experience, and I would gladly love to hear that and learn from it, because again, I have never been in a gunfight. I've had to defend myself, not with a firearm. So definitely the conversation, I appreciate a lot of that, and I hope you guys found this video a little entertaining, and if not, maybe hopefully informative, but at least entertaining. And I got nothing else for you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.